Morning everyone, my name is Robbie and I'm from Localis. I'm the founder of Localis and welcome to the presentation. So before we kick off, I want to talk a little bit about Localis and what makes us different to other data companies. We've got a modus operandi, if you will, where we believe that combining data sets together will help explain the relationship between people, places, things and time. And what do I specifically mean about this is that we can explain how a particular event, and depending on what that event is, and how that event affects a local economy, no matter what the size of the economy, and then in the local businesses in that local economy. So let's talk about tourism operators very quickly, and this is based on our experience with tourism operators. Localis has 100 and something clients across the country, mostly from an LGA perspective, which gives us access to hundreds of operators who we speak to on a regular basis, and this is our take on them. Number one, most tourism operators are very small. 77% of tourism operators across Australia, according to ATIC, employ less than 5 people, which includes people who employ themselves as well. The reason why we bring that up is that when we design a solution for these people, and Cloncurry is a great example, they're a client of ours, we've got to think of the Cloncurry test. Will someone from Cloncurry be able to pick this up and be wanting to use it? Can they understand what's given to them? Are they going to have to plug anything in? That speed to insight has to be very quick and very easy for them to understand. Economic pressures are forcing operators to focus on capturing demand, not trying to drive new demand, trying to capture demand that already exists, and trying to force them to save money on costs. This is where the workforce optimisation comes in. A lot of the people, especially in Queensland, are feeling a massive pinch from economic pressures right now, just like everyone else in the economy. We had a huge boom from a regional perspective with tourism back in 2020, 2021, but that is starting to taper now, so we really need to focus on capturing demand and costs. And finally, to make better decisions, just overall, you need better access to data. But data is expensive and data literacy from tourism operators is actually quite low. So how do we solve that? The number one thing that we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do, is that we have to build a baseline of demand. What you're looking at here, this is a real life example from a historical demand for Noosa. The yellow line is based on accommodation demand, but we also bring in transactional data down to a very fine detail so we can understand the nuances and the differences between a tour operator, a restaurant, a bar, or an accommodation provider, and anything else in between. But for this example, we're looking at accommodation specifically. The higher that yellow line goes, the higher that it goes, that means there's lots of demand, and the lower that it goes means there's less demand. So that's the start. That's the first thing we do. The next thing we do is that we add in key variables which can help us understand what is driving demand at a local level. This can include holidays, which are obvious, but the magnitude of holiday demand does change a lot to do with economic pressures, especially in a region like Noosa, which is quite affluent. But it can also include food festivals, it can include weather events, it can include road closures and everything else in between. The magic from our perspective is understanding correlation versus causation and how we can make recommendations to people based on that. So, we add in school holidays. Pretty obvious peak, right? But what's not obvious is this weather event, the massive drop that we see in around November last year. Now, the reason for that is that we had 2 weeks of rain. Everyone cast their mind back a couple of years ago when we had the big flood. There was a rain bomb forecasted for Noosa, which didn't eventuate. Thank God, that didn't happen, right? There was no flooding. But because of that, we did see a massive drop in accommodation demand for Noosa for that particular weekend, right? But then it was quickly followed up by a major event. This for Noosa is the Noosa Triathlon, which every year is the second highest peak of demand, right? This is quite obvious, and this is historical demand. Then what we do is we look at future demand. We look back historically to understand the weightings and what drives demand, but the whole purpose of this is to try and look at future demand and intercept what's going to happen before it happens. So again, this is a real life example of Noosa. The Noosa Marathon and Noosa Triathlon are by far the biggest events that pull people from overnight expenditure into Noosa, right? That's pretty obvious. What's not obvious is that the Food and Wine Festival, which does cost a lot of money to put on and a lot of effort to market, doesn't actually drive a whole lot of overnight expenditure into Noosa. It's not a key driver of occupancy data, and that's because most of the people who go to this event are people from the Sunshine Coast or Noosa locals themselves. It's a more community event. So this doesn't actually drive huge amounts of demand. Then you've obviously got Christmas there as well. And again, this is purely from an accommodation perspective. But if we were to change this slightly and look at tourism operators, so the next slide we're going to look at is we're going to look at, surfboard, people who want to hire boards, people who want to hire boats, etc. It's slightly different. There are nuances within this. Now, the first one you'll pick up on is a Noosa Marathon and Noosa Triathlon don't have the gigantic peaks that you see with accommodation demand. Now, when we first picked up on this, we thought there would be some sort of mistake. But when we spoke to the board, the people who actually hire the boards on the ground there, they said that they didn't know this, but it was good to see that their business wasn't the only one that's suffering. The reason for this is that if anyone here knows a triathlete or knows a marathon runner, they're not looking for more activities to do on the day of or throughout that weekend. Their legs are already tired. Everyone here does that. Obviously, there has to be someone, law of numbers. But it actually wipes out demand for everything else for that weekend. We could actually tell them to go away for the weekend, enjoy a weekend off, and enjoy the very rare opportunities you have that, because there is no one from the marathons or no one from the triathlons who'll be going out and looking for extra activities to do, which is counterintuitive, and we only know that because we get to look at the very fine granular details from the transaction data that we have. Two other things that pop up is there's a food and wine festival, which does actually increase the amount of people who use operators, which we didn't realize we'd pick up on. And there's a B2B conference as well, who does have partnerships with board operators, etc., to help them marry the B2B people while they're there to help them go out and experience more of Noosa. That actually does drive a lot of demand, which we didn't pick up on. But these are instances that we can go back and tell the community that, hey, there is something that's going to come and drive demand. You should put more staff on or take staff off. And obviously Christmas. Now, the next step, once we understand all of the ones and zeros that go into this, is that we know that our tourism operators won't be able to pick up on this straight away. We have to surface them in natural language what's going on. These are real life examples that we have given to people over the last couple of years. There is a large conference this weekend in Longreach. As there'll be higher than normal number of people in Longreach, you should consider opening up on a Sunday. Now, back to our Cloncurry example, Matt Bromman noticed at the top there, there is no way that you can try and force people to open on a Sunday in regional Australia. They just probably won't do it. However, if we can provide them the data to say that there are going to be people there, they would love a coffee in the morning, you should potentially open. Maybe with the economic pressures, potentially they will do that into the future. The ball's in their court. The Noosa Triathlon is happening in 14 days. Traditionally, this event is lower than normal trade. So we recommend that you reduce the number of staff hours this weekend because they're simply not going to come into and smash all the bars or smash all of the boards. And another one is you're currently trending below market holidays for holiday bookings. This is going back to an accommodation example, right? So we can let people know that they are trending below the trend lines of last year. So they should focus their staff's attention on trying to drive demand. Focus their attention on sending out an email or getting ads in market because you're not going to do as well as last year. The market is softening. And again, the whole purpose of this is to try and intercept what's going to happen before it happens. So what will tourism operators actually get? It's a cloud-based product. They'll log in and they can get real-time information about what's happening in their area and insight that's very current for them. The insight that they get is not something that they've ever had access to before, probably because it's been too expensive or it's too hard to get. And more importantly, the system learns over time. The more information that we provide it and the more operators that go on, the better this system gets. And most importantly, support and training are within the platform and makes it very easy to understand, which is important. How can we distribute the product? Well, the obvious one, and the first one we want to go with, is via partnerships. Partnerships with DTIS, QTIC, TEQ, and other DMOs, etc., etc. This is great. We're very open to this. We're also open to going direct. So how much would this cost for a tourism operator if they were going to go direct through us? We would aim for the price range of between $25 and $35 per month. The reason why we've chosen this, apart from the fact that it makes it financially viable, is to achieve return on investment, all we would need to do is save our clients 1 hour of wages per month and they'd have a return on investment. This is the same as a margarita, either buying or selling, or a Netflix subscription. So it's pretty palatable for our clients. What resources we have to make this a reality? We've got the technical ability. We execute projects like this all over the country. We've got 125 local government clients. We've got the data sets, partnerships, contracts, everything in place, and we've got the project management skills to make it a reality. What we would love help with is help and recommendation with distribution. There are a lot of partnerships out there that we're unaware of. There's a lot of stuff happening in government that we're unaware of that we would love help with. How can a solution be applied in regional remote areas? In short, the answer is yes. It in fact works better in regional areas than it does in other areas, and this is because of signal versus noise. There's less noise in regional areas than there is in metro areas, so we can make this a reality. In fact, we've tested it in regional areas and it does work quite well. And finally, why is this the right solution? The data, the insights that have been delivered to operators has been out of reach since forever. This will be an Australian first and potentially a world first to bring all this data in and give it to operators at this scale. Every operator, regardless of size or regardless of ability, can benefit immediately just from logging in and looking at the dashboard. And Localis has a track record of delivering these sort of projects, so the money would be in safe hands. And that's it, guys.
Thank you, Robbie. That was really great. So we'll hand it over to the judges. When you pick up the mic, turn it on. It'll have a bit of a lag before you can start speaking to it, but hand it over to the judges.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks very much. That was really interesting. Really a fascinating sort of insights into what goes on in Noosa, like in terms of, as a non-tourism person, I would have thought, those triathletes would be out there being active, but no, they're resting. So
Yeah. So when we originally made the recommendation, this is years ago, like, you should put stuff on, and like, that's the quietest weekend we have. I'm like, why? And then we had to buy another data set which actually showed what was happening. So, yeah.
So that takes me to one of my questions for you about the data sets. Well, two questions actually. One is, how widely available is the data that you need to build these insights? So I can understand for somewhere that's very tourism focused and had a long history, there might be a fair bit of data, but in other places maybe not. So how do you overcome that? And then the second question following on from that is, how much work do the businesses that might hire you have to do to make your product work for them?
So data, let's start with the first one, which is data. The core data set that we look at is Visa transactional data. The reason why we use Visa, we went out to a huge pitch. Visa is 50% of all the cardholders in the country and 60% internationally if you take out Union Pay. So our sample size is gigantic. Years and years ago, when people mostly used cash in regional Australia, it would be more of a problem, but because 95% of transactions roughly happen now via card, every time a card gets picked up on, we get a lot of data from that. So we've tested this in regional areas from Cloncurry to Bourke to Mount Isa, and it works very, very well. So definitely enough for us to go away and make insights from that. To the second question, what was the second question? Sorry. How much work does the business have to do? Initially, nothing. All they've got to do is log in and they choose their region that they want to look at. So I want to log in on Mount Isa, and you choose what you want to benchmark yourself. So I'm a restaurant in Mount Isa, and then all of the work is taken care of them, and it will surface those insights. There's an option in there where they can go send me insights on a weekly basis or send me insights on a monthly basis, and they don't even have to log back in again. The insights will be automatically sent to their email or to their phone whenever they want to do it. They don't even have to log back in again if they don't want to. So not much. We're designing it. Part of the friction points that we want to take away is you have to log in, you have to keep going forward, you have to doing that. Most of the people that we want to deal with are pouring coffees, finding lost kids, etc., etc. So it has to be very low touch. So that's what we designed it around.
That was great. You clearly have a good knowledge of the tourism industry and understand that you're already working with a lot of the a lot of people within the industry already. How would this solution link into those products and services that you might already be offering to the tourism industry? And just another question on how dynamic the data is. So, for example, in times of disaster, or learning from what a disaster might, how it might impact visitation numbers. How quickly can we get that data back out to the businesses so that they can start making those business decisions?
Great questions. Let's go the second one first, which is how dynamic is the data, which is how often is the data refreshed, how quickly can people get insights. All the data we use with Localis now is from a forecasting perspective, especially for accommodation, is every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks it updates. There is an option for us to go away and make that faster, and that's the same for transaction data as well. So at a minimum it's every 2 weeks. However, there are levers for us to pull in times of disaster. We've actually set this up with Visa to basically pull lever, and then every 48 hours we get information back on disasters specifically. That will be incorporated into this and then into future products as well. And what was the first question, sorry? Oh yeah, so difference between our current product set and this one?
Yeah. So how would it link into what you're already offering to the tourism businesses?
So our current sets of products, we're a very small team. We mostly focus on local governments and destination marketing organisations. We don't focus a lot on trying to monetize operators. This set of money will allow us to make the operators a priority and accelerate what is already kind of in the pipeline, but make it for the reality for operators now. So operators right now are hurting, are all across the state and all across the country, and this will allow them to get access to the tool much faster and much cheaper than what they could get into the future.
Thanks, Robbie. I think that's working now. Yep, it is. Great platform, great data as well. My question's more around how can the average tourism operator be using this to sort of help workforce capability and then retain staff? So a bit of an example of how to do that. And you also spoke about literacy and data literacy. How do you get around that with the average operator, which is that SME, mum and dad operator? How do you work through that in Cloncurry, for example?
Yep, cool. So let's start with how can an operator use this to optimize the workforce. If you are a restaurant and you have to employ a lot of people, and it's basically 100% focused on demand, right? Being able to look into the future and figure out what the demand's going to be, it's massive. So the Noosa was another one that tipped us off that this was actually a thing. So both Noosa surf clubs log in on a Monday. They go, if it's above 70% occupancy, we need to put 5 more staff on. If it's below that, we can take staff away. That's from them. We didn't realise that people would actually do that, and they tell other people to go away and do that as well. So that's exactly what we're going to do. The second part of that is how can people log in and see this? They're kind of busy. By surfacing it to them and doing the insights for them, which was the paragraphs that we saw after the graphs themselves could be pretty intimidating, where it's ups and downs. It's very difficult to look at. Part of the platform itself will be to surface them in natural language and take that extra step. So you don't need an analyst to go away and look at this. The platform does it for you. So the platform understands demand, it understands peaks and troughs, can make assertions about it, and then makes a recommendation off the back of that. The other thing that's built into that is that it'll have like a thumbs up or a thumbs down sort of signal. So as clients want to go in and make, oh, hang on, this is good for me, I'll give that a thumbs up, or this makes no sense for me, I'll give it a thumbs down. We can go in and manually review that to make sure that it is constantly learning, getting better as we go along.
Can you give a big round of applause for Robbie? Thank you very much.